Mama, please, do not kill me. I don't want to die.
Her own twin sister and her mother tied her up and threw her into the river out of jealousy. Will they get away with that? Well, let's find out. In a quiet village surrounded by palm trees and flowing rivers, there lived two twin sisters named Isabella and Vivian. They looked exactly alike. Same face, same eyes, same voice, but anyone who knew them would quickly say one thing: their hearts were nothing alike. Isabella was known across the village for her kindness, greeted elders with respect, and always wear a warm smile. Whether she was in the market or at home, people felt peace around her. Vivian, on the other hand, was the complete opposite. She was rude, impatient, and full of pride. She spoke harshly, looked down on others, and believed she deserved more than everyone around her. The villagers often whispered, two people may share the same face, but not the same soul. The twins lived with their mother in a small hut at the edge of the village. Their father had died many years ago, leaving the three of them to survive on their own. But even in his absence, his memory lived in Isabella. She remembered his kindness, his laughter, and the way he always told her, a good heart will take you far than beauty will ever. Vivian never cared for such words. To her, kindness was weakness, and poverty was something she refused to accept. While Isabella spent her days helping her mother and selling fruit in the market, Vivian avoided works. Whenever she could, she often complained about life, blaming everyone but herself. Their mother said little, but deep down she favored Vivian. Perhaps it was because Vivian reminded her of a stronger, more ambitious version of herself. Or perhaps it was because she believed kindness would never change their situation. Still, Isabella never complained. Every morning she would carry a basket of fresh fruit on her head and walk through the village with quiet strength, greeting everyone she passed. Even those who had nothing always received something from Isabella, and without knowing it, her kindness was already beginning to change her destiny, because somewhere in that quiet village, someone important was about to notice her. One fateful evening, as Isabella made her way from the market, a basket of fresh fruit balanced carefully on her head. The village path was quiet, painted gold by the evening light. As she walked, she noticed an old woman sitting by the roadside, her face tired and her hands trembling. Isabella slowed down. Without hesitation, she gently lowered her basket and picked out a ripe orange. With a soft smile, she placed it on the old woman's hand using her left hand. "May this give you strength," she said calmly. The old woman's eyes filled with gratitude. Not far ahead, a group of children played in the dust. Their laughters were loud, but their clothes warmed and faded. Isabella called out to them and handed each child a fruit from her basket. Again, using her left hand, even without thinking about it. Their faces light up with joy as they thanked her. But Isabella didn't know she was being watched. Standing beneath the shade of a tall tree, dressed in simple clothing to avoid attention, was the prince of the kingdom. He has been passing through the village quietly when he saw her. At first, it was her beauty that caught his eyes, but it was her kindness that held his attention. He watched how she gave without hesitation, how she smiled without expecting anything in return, and most of all, he noticed the small details others would ignore. She used her left hand. Curious, he stepped forward. Isabella turned, slightly surprised to see a stranger standing before her. They spoke briefly. There was something calm and genuine about her voice that the prince could not ignore. From that moment, something changed. The prince began to visit the village more often. Sometimes he would walk beside her as she returned from the market. Other times he would invite her to the palace, showing her its beauty and history. Isabella was shy at first, but her natural warmth soon made her feel at ease. The king and queen grew fond of her. They admired her humility and kindness she showed without effort. As time passed, what began as simple meeting grew into something deeper. They laughed together, shared quiet moments, and slowly fell in love. Then one evening, under their favorite mango tree, with the full moon glowing softly above them, and the night calm and still. The prince went down on his knees and asked Isabella to be his wife. The news of Isabella's engagement spread through the village like wildfire. People rejoiced. They sang her praises, celebrating the girl whose kindness has finally been rewarded. Everywhere her name was mentioned, it was followed by smile and admiration. But inside the small hut at the edge of the village, joy did not linger. Vivian sat quietly in a corner, her face dark with anger as she listened to the villagers outside. Isabella, the future princess, they say, each word felt like a slap. Her hands clenched tightly, her chest burned with something they could no longer control, which is jealousy. We share the same face. We are the same. Why does she get everything? Her mother sat nearby, watching her carefully. Unlike the villagers, she did not celebrate. There was no pride in her eyes, only calculation. Vivian stood up suddenly, pacing back and forth. I will not watch her live a life meant for me, she snapped. I refuse to remain here while she becomes the queen. Her mother finally spoke, her voice calm but cold. And what do you intend to do about it? Vivian stopped walking. Slowly, a dangerous idea began to form in her mind. At first, it was just a thought, but the more she considered it, the more it made sense. We looked exactly the same, she said slowly. If Isabella were not there, no one would know the difference. The room felt silent. Her mother did not react with shock. Instead, she leaned forward slightly. Go on, she said. Vivian's eyes darkened. On the wedding day, she will be gone, and I will take her place. There was a brief pause, then a faint smile appeared on her mother's lips. It was not the smile of a loving parent. It was the smile of someone who had already made a choice. You are right, she said quietly. No one will question it. From that moment, the plan began. They watched Isabella closely. They learned her routines, her movements, her habits. And all the while, Isabella remained unaware. She continued preparing for her wedding with a heart full of joy, trusting the very people who were planning to destroy her. The night before the wedding, as Isabella slept peacefully, Vivian lay awake, staring into the darkness. Her mind was no longer filled with doubt, only determination. By this time tomorrow, she thought, everything will be mine. The morning of the wedding arrived, bright and beautiful. The entire village was alive with excitement. Drums echoed in the distance. Women sang joyful songs, and preparation filled every corner of the land. Isabella woke up early, her heart full of happiness. This was the day she had been waiting for, the day she would marry the man she loved. She began to prepare quietly, her hands steady, her face glowing with peace. Just as she was about to leave to the palace, her mother entered the room. There is something you must do first, she said. Isabella looked at her confused. A special bridal tradition, her mother continued. It must be done before you are seen in the ceremony. It will bring blessings to your marriage. Isabella hesitated for a moment, but she trusted her mother without question. Come, her mother said. Vivian stood quietly behind her, her expression unreadable. Together, the three of them walked towards the river at the edge of the village. The path was empty. The sound of celebration faded behind them. When they reached the river bank, Isabella smiled softly. What must I do? She asked. There was no answer. Before she could react, strong hands grabbed her from behind, her eyes widened in shock. Vivian, she gasped, but it was already too late. They forced her down, tying her hands tightly with rope. Fear rushed through her body. Mother, please, what are you doing? Her mother looked at her without emotion. You were never meant for that life, she said coldly. Tears filled Isabella's eyes as she struggled. Vivian stepped closer, her face hard. That crown belongs to me, she said. They dragged Isabella into a small canoe by the river. Her heart pounded violently as she realized the truth. This was not a ritual, it was betrayal. Please don't do this, she begged, her voice breaking, but her words meant nothing. With one final push, they sent the canoe driving into the river. Moments later, it overturned. Isabella was thrown into the cold rushing water. She struggled desperately, her tied hands making it impossible to stay afloat. Her cries were swallowed by the river. Vivian watched without flipping. Then she turned away. There was no hesitation, no regret, only one thought filled her mind. The wedding must go on. The palace was filled with life. Drums thundered through the air. Dancers moved in circle and voice rose in celebration as guests gathered for the royal wedding. Vivian sat quietly, dressed in Isabella's bridal attire, her face hidden beneath a flowing veil. No one suspected a thing. She moved carefully. To everyone, she was Isabella, the kind girl the prince has chosen, the future queen. But far away from the palace, the river told a different story. Isabella struggled beneath the rushing water, her hands still bound tightly. Each breath became harder than the last. As the current pulled her away from everything she knew, her strength began to fade. Her moment slowed. Just as her body started to give in, a distant voice cut through the sound of the water. Look there, a group of fishermen had spotted something drifting along the river. Without wasting time, they steered their boats closer. One of them reached out and grabbed hold of Isabella, pulling her into safety. Her body was weak, her breathing uneven. Quickly, they untied the rope around her wrist. Stay with us, one of them urged. Moments later, Isabella coughed, forcing water out of her lungs as she struggled to breathe again. She was alive. Meanwhile, back in the palace, the celebration had begun. The prince stood tall, dressed in royal garments, his eyes fixed on the bride, yet something felt wrong. He could not explain it, but the feeling could not leave him. The moment came for the royal tradition. A small bowl of honey was placed before the bride. As custom demanded, she was to feed the prince honey. Vivian lifted the spoon slowly, and without thinking, she used her right hand. The prince's expression changed instantly. His heart skipped, his eyes narrowed slightly. A quiet voice echoed in his mind. But she's left-handed, one of the many unique qualities he loves about her. The music continued. The celebration did not stop, but the prince was no longer at ease. He leaned closer, his voice low. Isabella, he said softly, what did you say to the old woman the day we met? Vivian froze. For a brief moment, she said nothing. Then she forced a smile beneath the veil, but her silence has already said too much. And at that very moment, the truth was already on its way to the palace gate. The prince leaned back slowly, his eyes fixed on the woman before him. Something was wrong, not just the hand she had used, but everything, the silence, the hesitation, the energy he felt once around Isabella was gone. Answer me, he said, his voice firm at this time. Her thoughts raised, searching for something, anything that could save her, but there was nothing. Before she could speak, a sudden commotion rose from outside the palace gates. Voices urged loud. The music began to fade as attention shifted. A guard rushed into the hall, bowing quickly before the king. Your Majesty, he said, slightly out of breath. Some fishermen are at the gates. They insisted on seeing you. They said they have found someone. The prince's heart skipped. Bring them in, the king ordered. Moments later, the large palace gate opened. The room fell into complete silence. Three fishermen walked in, with their clothes damped, their expressions serious, and between them was a young woman. Her clothes were soaked. Rope's marks were invisible around her wrists. The prince stepped forward immediately, his eyes wide in shock. Isabella, he whispered. Vivian stumbled backward. The spoon slipped from her hand, hitting the floor with a sharp sound. No, this is not possible, she murmured. Isabella tried to stand properly, but her body is still weak. But her voice was steady. They tried to kill me, she said, pointing directly at Vivian, then at their mother. The entire hall turned, all eyes fixed on them. The king rose slowly, his expression dark with anger. Is this true? He demanded. Vivian said nothing. Her silence was enough. The truth had already revealed itself. The prince turned away from her, his face filled with disappointment. Your own daughter, the king asked Vivian's mother, his voice filled with anger. Then the king's voice echoed across the hall. For this act of betrayal, you and your daughter are hereby banished from this kingdom. You will never return here. Vivian and her mother were taken away, their plans shattered, their lives exposed. Peace slowly returned to the hall. The prince gently held Isabella's hand carefully. The prince gently held Isabella's hand, careful of her wound, and this time there was no doubt. The prince tried to postpone the wedding. Isabella declined. It is our day, and nothing will stop us, she said. The wedding continued, but now with the true bride, and as the kingdom rejoiced, one truth remained clear. Two people may share the same face, but a good heart can never be copied. After Vivian and her mother were banished from the kingdom, peace slowly returned to the palace. The villagers who had gathered for the wedding breathed a sign of relief as the truth had been revealed. Isabella, though weak from the river ordeal, stood tall, her heart filled with quiet strength that none could deny. The prince gently held her hands, checking the rope mark and bruises, and whispered softly, "You have survived what no one else could. Your courage, your heart, it is unmatched." Isabella smiled faintly. Her voice trembled but steady. "I only trusted what was right. That is all." The ceremony continued, this time with full transparency and celebration. Music, laughter, and blessings filled the palace hall as the kingdom rejoiced over the triumph of truth and virtue. The queen herself stepped forward to place a delicate golden crown on Isabella's head, a symbol of not only future as a princess but also her unyielding goodness.